Hello YouTube. Bow, chubba, bow, wow. Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are continuing last week's episode on the creative process of a fashion collection. For many of us, the first step is to actually create a mood board. So if you haven't watched that video, I really recommend you to watch that first before you watch this one. Because today we're gonna continue that creative process by using the mood board and the inspiration behind it to start sketching a collection. And I'm super excited to do this and share it with you, and I hope you are too. So with further ado, let's jump into it. And please don't forget to subscribe. We'll give you 7 years of good luck. Or maybe not, but just subscribe. Anyway, on to the good stuff. Step number 1. So when you're starting to sketch a collection and you start gathering some ideas, I personally really like to have a few things on hand that help me get inspired. So obviously the first one is the mood board. This is not actually the one that I end up choosing at the end, but it has a lot of information I want to use. So I want to have that on hand. This is actually the mood board I end up with, a little bit more organized, but the imagery is pretty much the same. Probably put it here on the side so you guys can see a little bit at least. I might make some reference to it at some point. I have the initial ideas here on top as well. That'll do. And I also like to have two kind of sketches. So this is a 2D drawing, so the technical drawing that we use to kind of describe the technical parts of a garment, how it's actually made. I like to use this. I normally sketch on a normal mannequin, but like a fashion illustration. But sometimes I like to, if I want to emphasize a detail or if I want to see how actually the garment works on the body and how can I construct it, I like to use the 2D instead of the actual illustration. And then I have just one or two different, probably sometimes I have like a back and the front, but normally one or two, not more than that, figures that I can sketch on top of it, because a sketch is really quick. You don't really have to spend much time on it. So yeah, I'll use this, kind of put it behind, and I'll start sketching on top of it. Step number 2 is to look for shapes and forms within your mood board and your inspiration. For an example, here I'm starting to look obviously for shapes that I can pick from the mood board. So for an example, on the top left you have the gloves, which is a symbol of delicacy and the getting ready for the ball moment in Cinderella. I really like the detail on the gloves with that layered fabric on the bottom. I really wanted to recreate this potentially on sleeves. So I started drawing some example of sleeves I could potentially use for my sketches, my collection. Another thing that I really like about the mood board is the fabric on the stairs. It shows once again layers and that movement, that also is replicated on the horsehair. So I really want to use that specific silhouette to develop a garment or potentially a part of a garment. I think the gold elements will really stand out in this collection because it is very neutral and simple in terms of colors and fabrics. And talking about fabrics, I really want to utilize lightweight fabrics, so like linen and cotton, and all of my fabrics obviously are sustainable, which is very important. It's basically who I am as a brand. And this is just a quick example. You can continue exploring your mood board and exhausting all the ideas you can take from it. And I really recommend you do this before you even jump into sketching. And talking about sketching, that will be step number 3. And this is the part that you can go wild. This is obviously my favorite part. I love sketching. I love creating. And you can be honestly so creative with this step. But don't feel like this will be quick. It actually is the step that takes the longest because you have so many ideas and sometimes you have no idea at all. So it's never a consistency. It always changes. So obviously I just use those keywords that I mentioned in the mood board. I used my mood board, I used my inspiration, my imagery, and I started sketching. It's important that you always go back to your mood board, because that way you don't lose track of what you're doing. For example, here I went back, I started exploring that detail on the glove and how could I replicate it in a skirt or a dress. So I started sketching like that silhouette on the bottom of my skirt. One thing that I realized while I was sketching is that there are two major details I really wanted to have across the entire collection, which is sleeves and open backs. You'll see that pretty much all of the dresses that I actually end up with, this is just sketches, the actual final sketches that I chose, they all have details on sleeves, and pretty much all of them have an open back. I actually ended up doing, I think, around 30 sketches plus maybe to a mini collection of 6 outfits. So as I mentioned, this can take a long time, but feel free to explore as many ideas as possible and don't feel afraid to go back and change what you have done. Obviously, it's important that you don't change too much and you don't always keep coming back to that first step of creating the collection. And this is very tempting. I'm telling you, as a designer, we do this all the time. But if you keep coming back and changing all the time, you'll never finish your collection. So just feel free to do that for the first month or so that you are creating a collection. But when it's time, you need to finish, and that's it. In the future, I'll also show you how I do my actual fashion illustration for my portfolio, which is different from the sketches. Sketches are quick, simple, just exploring ideas for the collection. I then start organizing some of my sketches. Obviously, as I mentioned, I ended up doing 30. This was just the beginning. But here you'll see what I was mentioning about my sleeves. I realized that I was really into the sleeves for this collection, so I started exploring shapes within the sleeves. What sort of sleeves could I use and wear? And also the 2D drawing is very good to see if your designs actually make sense and are doable. Obviously, if you're doing avant-garde collection, then doable is not really the word to use, but I wanted to, that's not my thing. I really want to do a conventional slash usable collection. So I started exploring what ways that I can actually make this garment. So the 2D drawing is very, very good to do so. And also you start exploring what sort of stitches and closures you can do on each garment. It's good to also narrow down what you actually want to do or not, because if something is really out of what your style is and it actually doesn't work, it doesn't actually go with the storytelling of your collection, then maybe you should take it off of your collection. And this is a difficult process, selecting the ones that you want, but the 2D drawing can actually help. I personally think so, because as I mentioned, I make the clothes myself, so I understand what is doable and what is not. And if a detail is not really right, I have to change it or actually don't use it at all. And as I mentioned as well, you can see here, like, I have quite a lot of open bags in my collection. So that's something that when I'm done sketching, I copy them to a digital program and I basically redo them. This makes it a little bit more neat, and in my opinion, it kind of looks better. I am quite new to digital painting, so I'm still learning the real techniques and the best programs. I honestly just found Procreate and I really, really like it. This is not Procreate, it's another program, but now I only use Procreate. But one thing that it made me change to digital or add digital into my sketching is because it's so much easier to choose colors and like if I want to try a different color on the same garment, I have to either paint it 3 times, while on digital I can just literally create a new layer and paint on top with a massive brush and just have an idea what the colors would
look best, what color will look best. So I just find it much easier. And also another thing that I really like on digital is that I can easily add textures of fabrics and so on, and I really enjoy that on digital. So if you haven't tried, I really recommend it to do so. I find that sketching on digital is still a little bit difficult, so that's why I sketch first on paper and then I pass it to digital and just use the colors to explore. And talking about colors, step number 4 is colors, obviously. This is the time for us to explore. And as I mentioned, I like to do this digital because it's so much easier. And also, I feel like I have a better understanding of the colors. I can easily check the complementary colors and so on. Maybe a subject for another video, but this is just an example of what I do. I basically put side by side the colors of the garments I can potentially use within my collection palette, and I see which one suits better that garment. I also, after I choose a couple of garments, I tend to put them in order, see if they make sense, the transition within garment to garment, and that's basically how I go about in choosing colors. It is not very often, but sometimes I do end up changing the colors like last minute, especially if I don't find the right fabric to match that garment, the idea that I had of that garment. And this is a subject that I will also talk about in the next video when I go to source fabrics. I will take you along with me so we can so I can show you basically how frustrating it can be when you can't find exactly. And we made it to the last step, which is choosing the final sketches for your collection. As I mentioned, this is just sketches, so it's not the final illustration, it's not the final garment. They are still subjected to changes, especially because I am sourcing fabric, I'm not creating fabric, I'm not Dior. They can actually demand and ask for the specific fabrics that they want, and I'm not really sure if I'll be able to find all of these fabrics that I intend to use, but I'm confident that I'll be able to find something that I can potentially use and change it to look like what I want, to reach the vision that I have for this collection. As I mentioned, this collection is inspired on Cinderella. I wanted to show another side of Cinderella. I'm not using the blues and the sparkles and all of that fairy tale potential. I will do that in the future, don't know. But I really wanted to talk about her beginning, like who she was, a simple maid, a simple person that grew in the countryside. I wanted to show that simplicity and the legacy through my garments, but also I wanted to show how feminine she was, and yeah, this is a short collection, only 6 outfits. I will, however, incorporate other pieces to complement the collection, potentially a few jackets, skirts, trousers, something like that. And I will for sure take you with me on that journey as well. I also wanted to mention that on my website you can find these posts as well in more detailed. I didn't want it to have this YouTube video very long. I want it to be just concise and go straight to the point. But on my website you have step by step with all information and more examples of what I've done.
That's it, guys, we all done. Well, not really. You will realize that any fashion designer is never 100% satisfied with their work, and I think this is not just a fashion designer but artists in general. But probably there's going to be some changes. I can't promise it's going to stay exactly how we started out. But yeah, that's pretty much the start of a visual content in terms of how your clothing will look like at the end of this process, of this creative process. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Next week we're going back to pattern making, because I want to have the basics of pattern making done before we jump into actually making the garments, because I will use those patterns to change and create the clothing that we just sketched, basically. So yeah, next week we're going back to pattern making. We're gonna do trousers and skirt. I hope you guys are excited, because I am pretty excited, but I guess this is just me on a daily basis. And yeah, thank you so much for the support. Comment down below what style do you think that you are excited to see coming to life. If there's any that you actually don't really like and the reasons why, I really would love to hear your feedback. And don't forget to subscribe, it really supports my channel and it just shows YouTube and myself that you like the content that I put up. And yeah, let's just continue the process. I am, should I say excited again? No, anyway, see you next time.